Rebecca Chen was the kind of person you'd pass in the hallway without really noticing. Not because there was anything wrong with her, but because she'd perfected the art of blending in. At 42 years old, she worked as an accountant at Henderson & Associates, a mid-sized firm downtown where the coffee was always too weak and the air conditioning was always too cold. Every morning followed the same routine. She'd arrive at 8:30 sharp, grab her usual spot in the break room to heat up her oatmeal, exchange polite smiles with whoever happened to be there, and disappear into her cubicle by 8:45. Her desk was neat, organized and decorated with exactly 2 photos of her teenage daughters, Lily and Grace, nothing more, nothing less. The thing about Rebecca was that she liked it this way. After years of chaos and uncertainty, predictability felt like a warm blanket. She knew exactly what each day would bring. Spreadsheets, tax forms, quarterly reports, and the occasional small talk about weekend plans or the weather. She never volunteered information about herself, and people eventually stopped asking. Her co-workers were friendly enough. There was David from the marketing department who always had loud conversations on speakerphone. There was old Mr. Patterson who'd been with the company for 30 years and told the same stories every Monday. And then there was Monica, the office manager who seemed to know everything about everyone and ran the place like a well-oiled machine. But Rebecca's closest work friend, if you could call her that, was Lisa Wong. Lisa sat 3 cubicles down and had a personality that filled every room she entered. She was loud, funny, and had an opinion about everything. Somehow, despite Rebecca's best efforts to remain invisible, Lisa had decided they were friends. They'd have lunch together maybe twice a week, and Lisa would do most of the talking while Rebecca listened and occasionally offered a comment or two. It was mid-October when the announcement went up on the break room bulletin board. The annual Henderson & Associates talent show. Every year the company held this event, and every year, Rebecca made sure she was conveniently busy that evening. She'd watched the videos that circulated afterward and felt grateful she'd never participated. There was always someone singing off-key, someone attempting stand-up comedy that landed flat. And last year, 2 guys from IT had done a magic act that went hilariously wrong. Rebecca thought she'd successfully avoided the whole thing this year, too. She'd glanced at the announcement, noted the date, and mentally marked it as an evening she'd spend at home with her daughters, maybe watching a movie or helping with homework. But Lisa had other plans. "You're signing up this year," Lisa announced one Tuesday during their lunch break. They were sitting in the small cafe across the street, and Rebecca had just taken a bite of her sandwich. "Absolutely not," Rebecca said after swallowing. "Come on, I'm doing it. David's doing it. Even Patterson is reading poetry or something. You can't just hide every year. Watch me." Lisa leaned forward, grinning. "What are you afraid of? It's just for fun. Nobody expects Broadway quality here. Last year, Tom from accounting juggled oranges and dropped all of them. People loved it." "That's exactly why I'm not doing it," Rebecca replied, taking another bite to avoid further conversation. But Lisa wouldn't let it go. Over the next few days, she brought it up constantly. In the hallway, at the coffee machine, through instant messages. She even recruited David and a few others to join in the campaign to get Rebecca to participate. It all came to a head the following Monday during lunch. Rebecca had made the mistake of eating in the break room instead of going out. The place was packed, and somehow the conversation turned to the talent show. Lisa was holding court at the big table, and Rebecca was trapped in the corner with her salad, hoping to go unnoticed. "Rebecca must have some hidden talent," David said, pointing his fork in her direction. "You can't work somewhere for 6 years and never show us what you've got." "I can absolutely do that," Rebecca muttered. But people were already laughing and throwing out suggestions. "Maybe she's a secret singer. I bet she does pottery. Interpretive dance?" Rebecca felt her cheeks getting warm. She hated being the center of attention. All she wanted was to eat her lunch in peace and get back to her quarterly projections. Lisa was enjoying this way too much, egging everyone on. "Come on, Rebecca," Lisa pressed. "Give us something. Anything. You don't even have to be good at it." About 8 people were now looking at her expectantly. The break room had gone quiet except for the humming of the refrigerator. Rebecca felt cornered, annoyed, and suddenly exhausted by the whole thing. She wanted them to stop, to move on to another topic, to leave her alone. So she said the first thing that came to mind, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Fine. I'll play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 if it'll make everyone happy." The table erupted in laughter. David nearly spit out his coffee. Lisa slapped the table, cackling. Even Patterson, who rarely paid attention to anything, chuckled into his newspaper. Rachmaninoff. Lisa wheezed. Oh my God, Rebecca. That's hilarious. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds impossible. It's one of the hardest piano pieces ever written, came a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Mr. Henderson himself, the company's founder, standing there with an amused smile. He was in his 60s, gray-haired, and rarely made appearances in the break room. Is that so? He said, walking toward their table. Rebecca, I had no idea you were a pianist. Rebecca's stomach dropped. I'm not. I was joking. Sounded pretty specific for a joke, Henderson said, still smiling. Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. That's quite an ambitious choice. I really wasn't serious, Mr. Henderson. But Henderson was clearly entertained by the whole thing. He looked around at the gathered employees, all watching this exchange with growing interest. Tell you what, he said. Consider yourself officially registered for the talent show. I'll make sure Monica adds you to the program. This I've got to see. The break room burst into excited chatter. People were already talking about it like it was the highlight of the year. Lisa was grinning from ear to ear, thrilled that her campaign had succeeded, even if not in the way anyone expected. Rebecca sat frozen in her chair, her half-eaten salad forgotten. What had she just done? This was supposed to be a joke, a sarcastic comment to get people off her back. Now her boss had personally signed her up, and there was no way out without looking like she was backing down or making excuses. As people filtered out of the break room, returning to their desks, Lisa stayed behind. Hey, she said, her voice softer now. You don't actually have to do it, you know. I can talk to Henderson, explain it was just a joke. Rebecca looked at her friend. Part of her wanted to accept that offer immediately. But another part, a part she'd buried years ago, was stirring. A small voice reminding her of something she'd almost forgotten. It's fine, Rebecca heard herself say. I'll figure something out. That evening, Rebecca sat in her living room long after her daughters had gone to bed. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. In the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light, sat an upright piano that hadn't been played in 15 years. Rebecca didn't sleep much that night. She kept thinking about that piano sitting in her living room, collecting dust like some forgotten piece of furniture. Most people probably assumed it was just decoration, something left behind by a previous owner, but it was hers. It had always been hers. The next morning at work felt different. People kept glancing at her with knowing smiles. Someone had apparently posted about her performance on the company's internal chat, and now everyone seemed to be in on the joke. Rebecca tried to focus on her work, but every few minutes someone would pass by her cubicle with a comment. Can't wait for the show, Rebecca. You better start practicing. This is going to be legendary. By lunchtime, she was ready to scream. She grabbed her bag and headed out, planning to eat alone in her car, but Mr. Henderson caught her in the lobby. Rebecca, got a minute? She couldn't exactly say no to the boss. They stepped into his office and he gestured for her to sit. Listen, he said, settling into his chair. I don't want you to feel pressured about this talent show thing. If it was really just a joke, we can quietly take you off the program. No hard feelings. Rebecca should have felt relieved. This was her way out, handed to her on a silver platter. But something stopped her from taking it. What made you pick that specific piece? Henderson asked. Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto. That's not something most people would even know about. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then, almost against her will, she started talking. I studied piano a long time ago. I was pretty serious about it, actually. Henderson's eyebrows went up. Really? How serious? I went to the Berkshire Conservatory. Full scholarship. I was there for 3 years. Now Henderson was genuinely interested, leaning forward in his chair. What happened? Why did you stop? Rebecca looked down at her hands. These hands that typed numbers into spreadsheets all day used to do something completely different. Life happened, she said simply. My dad got sick, cancer. My mom couldn't handle everything alone, and I was the oldest. I had to come home, help with bills, take care of my younger brother. By the time things settled down, too much time had passed. I'd missed too much, so I got a practical degree in accounting instead. That must have been hard. It was what needed to be done. Rebecca stood up, suddenly uncomfortable with how much she'd shared. Anyway, I'll do the talent show. It's fine. I said I would, so I will. She left before Henderson could respond, her heart pounding. Why had she told him all that? She never talked about her past. Never. That evening, after dinner with her daughters, Rebecca found herself standing in front of the piano. Lily and Grace were upstairs doing homework. The house was quiet. She lifted the keyboard cover slowly, revealing the yellowed keys beneath. Some of them stuck a little when she pressed them. She sat down on the bench and placed her fingers on the keys, middle C. She pressed it, and the sound that came out was slightly out of tune but still recognizable. She played a simple C major scale. Her fingers remembered the pattern even after all these years. Then she tried a piece she'd learned as a teenager. A Chopin nocturne. It came back in fragments, pieces of muscle memory buried deep. She made mistakes, stumbled over passages she once knew by heart, but it was there. Underneath all those years of neglect, it was still there. Mom, Rebecca jumped. Grace was standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring at her with wide eyes. I didn't know you could play piano, Grace said. I used to. A long time ago. Why did you stop? Such a simple question from her 13-year-old daughter. Why did you stop? As if the answer should be just as simple. I got busy with other things, Rebecca said. Life got in the way. Grace came closer, sitting on the arm of the couch. What are you playing? Just some old pieces I used to know. I have to do something for a work thing. Can I hear? Rebecca shook her head. Not yet. I'm really rusty. Maybe later. But after Grace went back upstairs, Rebecca kept playing. She pulled out the old sheet music she'd kept stored in the piano bench. Yellowed and wrinkled, but still readable. She started working through the pieces, her fingers slowly remembering what her mind had tried to forget. Around 11 that night, Lily came downstairs for a glass of water and found her mother still at the piano. Mom, it's late. Are you okay? Rebecca looked up, surprised to see how much time had passed. Yeah, sweetie. I'm fine. Just practicing. For what? The company talent show. I kinda got volunteered, Lily grinned. Can't wait to see that. You never do anything fun like this. After her daughters went to bed, Rebecca sat staring at the piano. She thought about what she'd told Mr. Henderson. About the conservatory, about her father, about giving it all up. But she hadn't told him everything. She hadn't told him about the dreams she'd had, about the competitions she'd won, about the future everyone said she had ahead of her. She pulled out her phone and searched for a name she hadn't thought about in years. Professor Helen Kim, her old piano instructor at the conservatory. Would she even remember Rebecca? It had been almost 20 years. To her surprise, Professor Kim was still teaching. Her contact information was right there on the conservatory's website. Before she could overthink it, Rebecca typed out an email. Dear Professor Kim, you probably don't remember me, but I was your student from 2003 to 2006, Rebecca Chen. I know this is completely out of the blue, but I find myself in an unusual situation. She explained everything. The joke, the talent show, the fact that she hadn't seriously played in 15 years. She hit send before she could chicken out. She didn't expect a response, especially not at nearly midnight, but 20 minutes later her phone pinged. Rebecca, of course I remember you. You were one of my most talented students. I often wondered what happened to you. I'd love to help.
Can you do a video call tomorrow evening?
Rebecca stared at the message, her hand shaking slightly. This was really happening. She was really going to try to do this. The next 2 days passed in a blur. At work, the teasing continued, but Rebecca barely noticed. Her mind was elsewhere, running through finger exercises and trying to remember music theory she'd buried in the back of her mind. The video call with Professor Kim was both wonderful and terrifying. The professor looked older, her hair completely gray now, but her sharp eyes were the same. Play something for me, Professor Kim said after they'd exchanged pleasantries. Rebecca positioned her laptop so the camera could see the piano and played a Bach prelude. Her fingers stumbled through it, but she made it to the end. Not bad for 15 years away, Professor Kim said. But Rebecca, tell me the truth. What did you actually promise to play? Rebecca winced. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. There was a long silence. Then Professor Kim started laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind of laugh that comes from pure disbelief. Oh, Rebecca, you always did have a flair for the dramatic. Do you remember that piece? I performed it once, at a competition when I was 21. I don't know if I remember all of it. That's one of the most technically demanding pieces in the repertoire. How long until this talent show? 2 weeks. Professor Kim was quiet for a moment, thinking, okay, this is what we're going to do. I can't work miracles, but I can help you remember what you once knew. We'll have sessions every other evening. But Rebecca, you need to practice. I mean, really practice. 2-3 hours a day if you can manage it. I work full-time. I have 2 kids. Then you practice after they sleep. You practice on your lunch break if you have to. If you're serious about this, you make the time. Are you serious about this? Rebecca thought about that question. Was she? This had started as a sarcastic comment to get people to leave her alone. But somewhere along the way it had become something else. Something more. Yes, she said. I'm serious. Good. Then let's get to work. That night, after her first session with Professor Kim, Rebecca sat at the piano until 2 in the morning. Her fingers ached. Her back hurt. She'd made countless mistakes and wanted to quit at least 5 times. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt alive. The first week was brutal. Rebecca's fingers felt like they belonged to someone else. Passages that had once flowed naturally now felt like climbing a mountain in the dark. She'd sit at the piano after midnight, her daughters asleep upstairs, trying to coax her hands to remember what they'd once known so well. The Rachmaninoff piece was a monster, 30 minutes of relentless technical challenges, enormous stretches that pushed the limits of what human hands could do, and emotional depth that required complete vulnerability. At 21, she'd spent 6 months preparing it. Now she had less than 2 weeks. By Wednesday, her hands were cramping so badly she could barely hold her coffee mug at work. Lisa noticed immediately. What's wrong with your hands? Rebecca tried to flex her fingers under the table. Nothing. Just sore. From what? Lisa looked genuinely concerned now. I've been practicing. For the talent show. Lisa's eyes went wide. Wait, you're actually doing it? I thought you were joking. We all thought you were joking. So did I. Rebecca took a sip of coffee, wincing as she gripped the mug. But here we are. Can you actually play that Rachman? Whatever piece you mentioned? I used to. A long time ago. We'll see if I still can. The word spread through the office like wildfire. Rebecca Chen was actually preparing to play. This wasn't a joke anymore. The energy shifted from amused mockery to genuine curiosity. Some people seemed excited. Others looked almost concerned, like they were worried about watching someone fail publicly. David stopped by her cubicle that afternoon. Hey, I heard you're really doing this. That's actually pretty cool. Need anything? Moral support? I'm good, thanks. Look, I know people have been giving you a hard time. If it gets too much, just say the word. I can help shut it down. Rebecca was surprised by his sincerity. I appreciate that, really. But I'm okay. That evening's video session with Professor Kim was harder than the first. The professor was patient but demanding, catching every missed note, every lazy finger, every moment Rebecca tried to coast through a difficult passage. No, no, no. That run in measure 43 again. Rebecca played it again, and again, and again. 12 times before Professor Kim was satisfied. Your technique is coming back faster than I expected, the professor said. But you're holding back emotionally. This piece isn't just about hitting the right notes. Rachmaninoff put his soul into this music. You need to do the same. I know. I'm just focused on remembering it right now. There isn't time to separate technical and emotional work. They have to happen together. Professor Kim leaned closer to the camera. What's blocking you, Rebecca? Nothing. I'm fine. You're not fine. I can hear it. You're playing like someone who's afraid. Rebecca felt her throat tighten. Maybe I am afraid. Of what? Of failing. Of embarrassing myself. Of everyone at work laughing at me. Professor Kim was quiet for a moment. Or maybe you're afraid of succeeding. Afraid of remembering who you used to be and what you gave up. The words hit harder than Rebecca expected. She sat there staring at the piano keys, unable to respond. It's okay to grieve what you lost, Professor Kim said gently, but don't let that grief keep you from finding it again. After the call ended, Rebecca stayed at the piano. She started playing the second movement, the slow, heartbreaking section that had always been her favorite. This time she didn't focus on perfection. She just played, letting the music say everything she couldn't put into words. Upstairs, unbeknownst to her, both her daughters had woken up. They sat at the top of the stairs in their pajamas, listening to their mother play. They'd never heard anything like it. This wasn't the mom who made their lunches and helped with homework and reminded them about dentist appointments. This was someone else entirely. Someone they didn't know but desperately wanted to understand. The weekend came and Rebecca barely left the house. She ordered groceries online, canceled plans with friends, and spent almost every waking hour at the piano. Her daughters started to worry. "Mom, when's the last time you ate?" Lily asked Saturday afternoon, finding her mother still in her pajamas. "At the piano at 3 in the afternoon? I had coffee this morning." "Coffee isn't food." Lily disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a sandwich and some fruit. "Eat, now." Rebecca obeyed, grateful for her daughter's intervention. While she ate, Grace sat next to her on the piano bench. "Why is this so important to you?" Grace asked. "It's just a work thing, right?" Rebecca swallowed her bite of sandwich. "It started that way, but it's become something else." "Like what?" "A second chance, maybe." "I don't know." Rebecca looked at her youngest daughter. "You know how sometimes you think you know who you are, and then something happens that reminds you of who you used to be? Who you wanted to be?" Grace nodded slowly, even though Rebecca wasn't sure a 13-year-old could fully understand. "I gave up something I loved a long time ago. I had good reasons. I don't regret helping my family when they needed me. But I think part of me got lost along the way. And now I have a chance to find that part again, even if it's just for one night." "Then you should do it," Grace said simply, "even if it's scary." Monday morning, Rebecca could barely type. Her fingers were so sore that every keystroke hurt. She'd overdone it over the weekend, pushing too hard, practicing too long, but she'd made real progress. The muscle memory was coming back stronger now. Whole sections were flowing the way they used to. Lisa found her at lunch, icing her hands with a bag of frozen peas from the break room freezer. "Okay, now I'm actually worried about you," Lisa said, sitting down. "You look exhausted." "I am exhausted. Is this really worth it?" "It's just a talent show. Nobody expects you to actually pull this off." Rebecca looked at her friend. "That's exactly why I have to." "What do you mean?" "Everyone expects me to fail, to give up, to admit it was just a stupid joke. And maybe a few weeks ago I would have. But something changed. I realized I'm tired of being the person who plays it safe. The person who doesn't take risks. The person nobody really sees." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "I see you. I know you do. And I love you for it. But I don't even see myself most of the time. I've been invisible for so long that I forgot I could be anything else." That night's session with Professor Kim took a different turn. Instead of drilling technical passages, the professor had Rebecca play through the entire piece, mistakes and all, just to see how much she'd internalized. Rebecca made it through, stumbling in places but getting most of it right. When she finished, she looked at the camera, anxious for feedback. Professor Kim was smiling. "You're going to be fine." "Really?" "Because I'm terrified." "Good, that means you care. The day you stop being nervous before a performance is the day the music stops mattering." The professor paused. "But Rebecca, I want you to do something for me. I want you to stop practicing tomorrow." "What?" "The show is in 5 days." "Exactly. You're at the point where more practice will hurt more than help. Your hands need rest. Your mind needs rest. You know this piece now. Trust yourself. I can't just not practice. You can and you will. Go to work. Spend time with your daughters. Sleep. Let your body recover. Then Wednesday and Thursday, light practice only. Just enough to keep your fingers warm. Save your energy for Friday night." After they hung up, Rebecca felt lost. Not practice? That felt wrong. But she trusted Professor Kim. The woman had trained dozens of successful pianists. She knew what she was talking about. Tuesday felt strange. Rebecca came home from work and didn't go to the piano. Instead, she made dinner with her daughters, helped Grace with her math homework, and watched a movie with Lily. Normal things. Things she'd been too obsessed to do for the past 10 days. But Wednesday night, when she finally sat down for her light practice session, something had shifted. Her hands felt fresh. Her mind was clear. And the music flowed better than it had in weeks. Maybe Professor Kim was right. Maybe she'd needed to step back to move forward. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days until she'd walk onto that stage and either reclaim a part of herself she'd lost or confirm everyone's belief that she was just a middle-aged accountant with delusions of grandeur. Either way, she was going to find out who she really was. Thursday morning, Rebecca woke up with her stomach in knots. Tomorrow night. The talent show was tomorrow night. She'd done everything she could. Now it was just a matter of showing up and hoping her hands would remember what her brain had spent 2 weeks drilling into them. At work, the energy was different. The whole office seemed buzzing with excitement about the talent show. Someone had decorated the break room with streamers and a banner that read, "Henderson and Associates has talent." It felt both festive and terrifying. Mr. Henderson had gone all out this year. He'd rented the grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel, hired a sound system, and invited not just employees but their families and some important clients. What was usually a casual, slightly awkward office gathering had turned into a legitimate event. "Did you hear?" David said, catching Rebecca in the hallway. "Henderson invited the Morrisons. They're potentially our biggest client this year. He's trying to impress them with the company culture or something." Rebecca felt her chest tighten. "So there'll be strangers there?" "A bunch of them. He's treating this like a networking event." David must have seen the panic on her face because he quickly added, "Hey, no pressure though. Everyone's just excited to have a good time." But that was pressure. That was enormous pressure. It was one thing to embarrass herself in front of coworkers who'd forget about it in a few weeks. It was another thing entirely to do it in front of potential clients and their families. Lisa found her hiding in her cubicle during lunch. "You didn't come to the break room. Needed some quiet," Rebecca said, not looking up from her computer. Lisa pulled up a chair. "You're freaking out. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Look, I feel responsible for this whole mess. If I hadn't pushed you about the talent show in the first place, it's not your fault." Rebecca finally looked at her friend. "I'm the one who made that stupid comment. I'm the one who decided to actually go through with it. You can still back out. Say you're sick. Say your kid's sick. Nobody would blame you." Rebecca thought about it. It would be so easy. One text to Henderson, one excuse, and this would all go away. She could go back to being invisible, safe, predictable. "No," she heard herself say. "I'm doing it." That evening, Rebecca had her final video call with Professor Kim. They didn't practice. Instead, they just talked. "How are you feeling?" the professor asked. "Terrified, excited, nauseous, all of the above." Professor Kim laughed. "That sounds about right. Listen, I want to tell you something. When you were my student, you were incredibly talented, but you were also incredibly afraid of making mistakes. You'd practice until your hands bled rather than risk one wrong note in a performance. I remember. Tomorrow night you're going to make mistakes. That's just reality. You've had 2 weeks to prepare something that usually takes months. You're human. Mistakes will happen." Rebecca felt her anxiety spike. "That's not exactly a pep talk. Let me finish. When those mistakes happen, don't stop. Don't apologize. Don't let your face show panic. Just keep going like nothing happened. Because here's the secret most people don't know about music. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. It's about making people feel something, and you can play a technically perfect piece that leaves everyone cold, or you can play an imperfect piece that makes people cry. I know which one I'd rather hear." After they said goodbye, Rebecca sat at the piano one last time. She played through the piece slowly, not pushing, just reminding her hands of the journey they'd take tomorrow night. When she finished, she closed the keyboard cover gently. "That was beautiful," a voice said from behind her. Rebecca turned to find both her daughters standing there in their pajamas. She hadn't even heard them come downstairs. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough," Lily said. "Mom, you're amazing. I had no idea you could play like that." Grace nodded enthusiastically. "Can we come tomorrow?" "To watch?" Rebecca's first instinct was to say no. The thought of her daughters watching her potentially fail was unbearable. But then she looked at their faces so full of pride and excitement, and she couldn't deny them. "Yes. You can come." They squealed and rushed to hug her. As Rebecca held her daughters, she realized something. Win or lose tomorrow, this whole experience had already changed something. Her girls were seeing her as a whole person, not just their mom. They were seeing someone with dreams and fears and talents beyond making dinner and signing permission slips. Friday arrived too quickly. Rebecca could barely focus at work. Every hour felt like it was racing by and crawling along at the same time. She'd packed a simple black dress in her bag, the one her daughters had helped her pick out. Nothing fancy but appropriate for a performance. At 3 o'clock, Henderson made an announcement over the office intercom. "Everyone performing tonight should head out early to get ready. Show starts at 7. See you all there." Rebecca gathered her things, her hands shaking slightly. Lisa walked her to the parking lot. "I'm proud of you," Lisa said. "Whatever happens tonight, I'm proud of you for doing this." "Thanks. That means a lot. And hey, if you mess up, just remember that 2 years ago, Jenkins from accounting did a karaoke version of My Heart Will Go On that was so bad people still talk about it. So the bar is pretty low." Rebecca laughed despite her nerves. "That's actually helpful. Thank you." At home, she showered and got ready slowly, trying to calm her racing heart. Her daughters were getting dressed too, both of them more excited than she'd seen them in months. They all drove to the hotel together, and Rebecca's hands were so sweaty on the steering wheel that she had to wipe them on her dress at every stoplight. The Riverside Hotel ballroom was transformed. Lights, sound equipment, rows of chairs facing a small stage with a beautiful grand piano right in the center. Rebecca's breath caught when she saw it. A Steinway by the looks of it. Much better than her old upright at home. People were already arriving. Employees with their families dressed up like this was a real show. She saw Mr. Henderson greeting people at the door playing host. He caught her eye and gave her an encouraging nod. The other performers were gathering backstage, which was really just a sectioned-off area behind a curtain. There was Tom from IT who was going to do some kind of comedy routine. Amy from HR was singing. A few others were doing various acts. Everyone seemed relaxed, laughing and joking around. Rebecca found a quiet corner and sat down, trying to breathe steadily. She ran through the opening measures in her mind, her fingers twitching slightly as she imagined the keys. "Rebecca Chen." She looked up to see a young woman with a clipboard. The stage manager Henderson had hired for the event. "That's me." "Great. You're performing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, correct?" "The first movement, yes." "Okay, just so you know, you're performing last. Mr. Henderson specifically requested it. Said he wanted to end the show with something special." Last, she was going last. That meant sitting through everyone else's performances, her anxiety building the entire time. But it also meant the audience would be warmed up, in a good mood, ready to be entertained. "Sounds good," Rebecca managed to say. The stage manager moved on to the next performer. Rebecca checked her phone. One message from Professor Kim. "Break a leg. Remember, connection over perfection. I'm proud of you." She typed back a quick thank you, then turned off her phone. No more distractions. At 6:45, Henderson stepped onto the stage and asked everyone to find their seats. The show was about to begin. Rebecca peeked through the curtain and saw the ballroom filling up. At least 200 people, maybe more. In the third row, she spotted Lily and Grace sitting with Lisa. They were scanning the stage, looking for her. When Grace caught sight of the piano, she pointed it out to her sister excitedly. The lights dimmed. Henderson took the microphone and gave a welcome speech about company culture and appreciation for employees and their talents. Everyone applauded politely. Then the first act began. Tom with his comedy routine, which got decent laughs. Then Amy singing a pop song, her voice a little shaky but sweet. Then a group from the sales department doing a choreographed dance that was messy but enthusiastic. Each performance made Rebecca more nervous. These were just normal people doing normal talent show things. What was she thinking? Trying to play one of the hardest piano pieces ever written? Who did she think she was? But it was too late to back out now. The acts kept coming. Some good, some rough, all received with generous applause. The audience was in a good mood, enjoying themselves, laughing and clapping. Finally, after what felt like both hours and seconds, Henderson took the stage again, and now, for our final performance of the evening, from our accounting department, Rebecca Chen will be playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. The audience applauded politely, though Rebecca heard a few chuckles. They thought this was going to be the comedy portion of the evening. The accountant playing classical music. How cute. Rebecca stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked toward the stage. This was it. Rebecca walked across the stage, her legs somehow carrying her forward, even though they felt like they might give out at any moment. The spotlight was warm on her face. The grand piano sat there waiting, its polished black surface reflecting the stage lights. She could hear whispers in the audience. Scattered laughter. Someone coughed. In the third row, she caught a glimpse of her daughters, both sitting up straight, watching her with wide eyes. She reached the piano bench and sat down, adjusting the seat height slightly. Her hands were trembling. She placed them in her lap for a moment, taking a breath. This was real. This was actually happening. The ballroom had gone quiet. 200 people waiting to see what the accountant from the third floor was going to do. Some curious, some amused, most expecting this to be either a disaster or a joke they could laugh about on Monday morning. Rebecca lifted her hands and placed them on the keys. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she wasn't in that hotel ballroom anymore. She was 21 years old again in a competition hall with everything ahead of her. All the possibility, all the dreams. Before life had demanded she choose between her passion and her family. Before she'd become someone who lived small and safe and invisible. She opened her eyes, and then she began to play. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 filled the ballroom. Not tentative, not apologetic, bold and clear and absolutely certain. The whispers stopped immediately. What came from that piano wasn't what anyone expected. This wasn't someone fumbling through a piece they'd learned on YouTube. This was the sound of someone who'd spent years mastering their craft. Someone who understood not just the notes but the soul of the music. Rebecca's fingers moved across the keys with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. The famous opening theme rolled out in powerful waves, each note crisp and intentional. Her hands stretched across octaves that most people couldn't reach, executing passages that required years of training to even attempt. In the audience, mouths fell open. People leaned forward in their seats. The laughter had died completely, replaced by stunned silence. Lisa sat frozen, her hand covering her mouth. She'd known Rebecca for 6 years. 6 years of lunches and small talk and what Lisa had thought was friendship. But she'd never really known her at all. Henderson sat in the front row, his arms crossed, a slow smile spreading across his face. He'd suspected there was more to Rebecca's story, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. On stage, Rebecca was lost in the music now. Her nervousness had burned away the moment her fingers touched the keys. This was where she belonged. This was who she was underneath all those layers of ordinary life she'd wrapped around herself. The piece moved through its sections. The lyrical second theme sang out, tender and aching. Her touch on the keys was so controlled that you could hear every subtle shading, every emotional nuance. Then back to the thundering technical passages, her hands flying across the keyboard in a blur of motion. She missed a note in measure 73. A tiny stumble that she smoothed over so quickly that most people didn't even notice. Professor Kim's words echoed in her mind. Keep going. Don't apologize. Connection over perfection. So she kept going. Grace grabbed Lily's hand in the third row, squeezing tight. They were watching their mother become someone new. Or maybe someone she'd always been but had forgotten how to be. The music built and built, climbing toward the movement's climax. Rebecca's entire body was engaged now, swaying slightly, her face showing every emotion the music demanded. This wasn't just technical mastery. This was raw, honest, vulnerable artistry. The famous cadenza section arrived, the part where the pianist plays alone without orchestra. It's considered one of the most difficult passages in all of piano literature. A cascade of notes that seem to tumble over each other, requiring absolute precision and power. Rebecca attacked it fearlessly. Her hands moved so fast they seemed to blur. Octaves, arpeggios, complex rhythms all woven together in a tapestry of sound that filled every corner of that ballroom. Someone in the audience gasped. Actually gasped out loud, and then, the final section, the triumphant conclusion where everything comes together. Rebecca poured everything she had into it. All the years of regret, all the dreams she'd buried, all the small moments of her life where she'd chosen duty over desire. It all went into the music. The final chord rang out, powerful and definitive. Then silence. Rebecca lifted her hands from the keys, her chest heaving. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. For what felt like an eternity but was probably only 3 seconds, nobody moved. The audience sat in complete shocked silence, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Then someone stood up. It was Mr. Henderson. He started clapping, and then everyone else rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. Not polite office party applause. Real applause. The kind that comes from genuine awe and appreciation. People were whistling, cheering. Some were actually crying. Rebecca stood up from the piano bench, overwhelmed. She looked out at the standing ovation and couldn't quite believe it was for her. For the invisible accountant, for the woman nobody really noticed. Lisa was openly sobbing in the third row, still clapping. Lily and Grace were jumping up and down, screaming with excitement. Even the Morrison family, the potential clients Henderson was trying to impress, were on their feet applauding enthusiastically. Henderson walked onto the stage, still clapping, and pulled Rebecca into a hug. "That was extraordinary," he said in her ear. "Absolutely extraordinary." Other performers came rushing from backstage. Tom from IT was shaking his head in disbelief. Amy was crying. Everyone wanted to congratulate her, hug her, tell her how incredible she was. The audience kept applauding. It went on and on. Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She just stood there, letting it all wash over her. The recognition, the validation, the feeling of being truly seen for the first time in years. When the applause finally died down, people didn't leave. They crowded around the stage. An older man introduced himself as Vincent Morrison, the potential client Henderson had been trying to impress. "My wife and I are season ticket holders at the Symphony," he said, shaking Rebecca's hand firmly. "That was as good as anything we've heard there." "Where did you train?" "Berkshire Conservatory," Rebecca managed to say. "A long time ago." "Well, you haven't lost it." That was remarkable. Her daughters finally made it through the crowd. They threw themselves at her, both talking at once. "Mom, that was insane. Why didn't you ever tell us you could do that?" "You're famous now. Can you teach me to play?" Rebecca hugged them both tight, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you both so much." Lisa appeared next, mascara running down her face. "You've been hiding this for 6 years?" 6 years. I'm so mad at you right now, and so proud, but mostly mad. But actually proud. I don't know how I feel." They both laughed, and Rebecca pulled her friend into a hug. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People kept coming up to her, asking questions, sharing their reactions. Several people asked if she taught piano lessons. One woman asked if she'd consider performing at her daughter's wedding. Someone else mentioned a local concert series that was always looking for performers. Henderson found her again before the night ended. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For never seeing you. Really seeing you. You've worked for me for 6 years and I had no idea who you were." Rebecca smiled. "To be fair, neither did I." Later that night, after they'd finally made it home, Rebecca sat on the couch with her daughters. They were still buzzing with excitement, talking over each other about their favorite parts of the performance. "Are you going to keep playing?" Grace asked. "Like for real?" Rebecca thought about it. 2 weeks ago, she would have said no. She would have gone back to her safe, invisible life and pretended none of this ever happened. But something fundamental had shifted. She'd remembered who she was. And now that she'd remembered, she couldn't forget again. "Yes," she said. "I'm going to keep playing." "Good," Lily said. "Because you're too good to stop." The next morning, Rebecca woke up to find her phone flooded with messages. Someone had recorded her performance and posted it online. It had been shared hundreds of times. People from the conservatory were reaching out. Former classmates she hadn't heard from in years. Even Professor Kim had sent a text. "I told you, connection over perfection. You did both. Proud doesn't begin to cover it." On Monday, walking into the office felt different. People looked at her with new eyes. Not the invisible accountant anymore. Someone real. Someone with depth and history and talent. But more than that, Rebecca looked at herself differently. She'd spent so many years playing small, hiding who she really was, choosing safety over risk. One sarcastic comment had accidentally blown that safe life apart, and she'd never been more grateful for anything in her life. Sometimes the things we say as jokes turn out to be the truth we needed to tell. Sometimes the person we're pretending to be gets in the way of the person we actually are. And sometimes all it takes is one moment of courage to remember that it's never too late to become yourself again. Rebecca learned all of that because of a humorous remark that led to a piano performance that astonished everyone. Most importantly, it astonished her.